Hi, Jacqui. It's so lovely to have you at Kuter. Thank you so much for making the time. How are you today?
Hi, Leilani. I'm fantastic. Thank you. I'm excited to be here with you today and the people who are inspired by you.
It's only a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
How are you today, if I may interrupt?
No, 100%. I am doing great. I love September. It's absolutely just the most beautiful month. And I live in Gauteng, and our weather is beautiful today. I think today is just one stunning day. So it's going really well with me. Thank you for asking.
Pleasure. We're having an exquisite day, yeah, and I decided before meeting with you, I took a walk on the promenade, and it was breathtaking. Nice and warm and lovely.
Now you are just bragging.
Not really, but I'll take it.
You are allowed to. So, Jacqui, I always start with an icebreaker, because interviews can sometimes be so intimidating both ways. So I like to start with the icebreaker. So my icebreaker question to you is, do you think it's only lazy people who cycles with an e-bike?
Yes, almost So let me put it this way. I do a lot of sport. I do a lot of walking, hiking, yoga, running, you name it.
Yeah.
But I've always had a thing about bicycles that I do not understand why people cycle bicycles, because my bum gets sore. Sorry, I hope I'm allowed to say that. Anyway, my boyfriend has a second bicycle, and he said, just give it a go. And I'm not cycling fit, but I'm active and fit. And so I've recently been on the bicycle, and you're a scallum because you saw that, I guess. But so no, not only lazy people who don't cycle and who decide to get on a bicycle after 30 years like me. Yeah, it's just beautiful. You're up there. You have to do some work. I hate to break the news to you.
I would say
I want to get even with you.
Hierdie is exactly wat ek wil bereik met my icebreaking questions, because jy het nie daai gesien kom nie.
Not even a little bit. Although when you had your cycling shirt on, I thought about that post of me and
ek moet super. Ja, want ek kry ook fiets. Ag nou, jy weet, op 'n serious note, ek dink dit is wonderlik om 'n e-bike te hê. Jy weet, so ek as 'n kind kon bekostig het ek beslis een gehad. Jy weet, want mens kom op 'n ouderdom in jou lewe wat jy dink, maar hoekom wil ek sukkel? Jy weet hoekom? So, I think it's actually amazing. And you also wrote, it's a fourth time in 30 years that you cycled. So well done for being on the bike again.
I have a very sweet poem that I wrote that's actually on my website. I think it's called Dunbar's Bicycle, and it was probably the third time, actually probably the last time I was on a bicycle, or second time in 30 years, and that was when I was your age, funny enough. And I talk about how free I feel just riding and pedaling this, this old beautiful orange bicycle. So it's really about the experience. It takes you into the moment, and you can have a childlike experience, which is just so good for our spirits.
Oh, no, listen, I absolutely agree with you. I always tell people, or people tell me, am I really 47? Because I'm like a 47-year-old in a 27-year-old body, okay? And this is the one thing about sport as well. And I always tell people, you don't have to be good, just go and do it. And we're going to talk about trauma today, and just life experiences and things we've been through and things like that, okay? And this is one tip I always give to people. And I don't know if you're going to agree with me, but try to get out there and do something. Be that child again, because it really helps with your healing. If it's dancing, writing, jogging, walking, cycling, swimming, just move your body. Do you agree with me?
Leilani, is heeltemal reg. En ek het in 2014, I studied in San Francisco, integral coach working. And we as human beings are actually incredibly complex, particularly when we have suffered any form of trauma. We become actually more complex in terms of our layers. And we have the emotions attached to the trauma. We have the body felt experiences attached to the trauma, and all of these things that we need to heal from. And one of the best ways to heal is to reconnect with your spirit and the spirit of who we are. So you think of any 2-year-old I'm sure anyone who's listening today, when they've had a child, and the child will say 3-4 times over, even though they saw a butterfly on Monday, if they see a butterfly a week later, a month ago, they go, "Mommy, look at the butterfly." And the mother's thinking, but you've seen a butterfly, but every time they're excited. So when we do any sport, whatever, the best thing we can do is to actually not be good at it pitch up as a 2-year-old, have so much fun. And what you're actually doing, which I've learned from my studies, is you're reintegrating the child self that understands that healing is possible, that doesn't carry the trauma. And the more we activate that part of our body, it definitely helps us heal from our trauma on so many levels. And as I say, besides studying that, my teachers giving me work in those years to do around that, I couldn't recommend it enough.
Yeah, because one of the questions I always get is when people ask me, how did I cope with all of this over all these years? And then my answer is always, because I did sports. That's all. Because I kept myself healthy and busy. But you know, today is not about me. I want to talk about, you were 2 years old when you had your first near-death experience. You also mentioned you had 9. Can you please tell me about that? Because I've never met anybody who had so many near-death life experiences, and I'm very curious about this.
So I have to be honest with you, I've had 2 this year. So since my book finished in 2013, I'm on number 11. I had a terrible car accident about 5-6 weeks ago, and I've watched how that has reignited my trauma. So having healed, and I will come back to that 2-year-old self, so having had so many multiple traumas in my life, I was very unaware of how they were affecting me or how I was responding to the world. Without realizing, I thought the whole world was attacking me, because at some stages it was like, why me? Why did I go through this? Why did I have this trauma? But the first trauma that was actually stored in my DNA was just an innocent accident. I'd fallen into the pool. I was about 2 years old. And it was one of the times where I separated. So my entire soul and spirit separated from my body, to the point that I was at the bottom of the pool and was having, you know, a complete death experience when you've gone to the other side. And I remember looking down at the pool and seeing my father jump in and haul me out of the pool, and the hysteria of the friends around the pool. And my mother, there was friends with their children there, and watching all of that. And as my father, you know, took me to bring the water out of me and save me and resuscitate me. And then there was this moment where I was walking with the light. I remember being small. I remember holding a hand. And at some stage I looked back, and the light said to me, you can go back. And it was this curiosity of this 2-year-old was like, I can. And I chose to come back. Now, having had so many other traumas, I sometimes why my 2-year-old self wanted to come back into the world for more trauma. Some of the trauma is trauma I brought to myself in terms of trying to commit suicide. A lot of trauma that happened like a 2-year-old, where it just happened. It makes no sense why it happened to me, or having a car accident where I went over a cliff into the sea of 200 meters into the sea. And so many of these things would indicate that I should be dead. I shouldn't be here. But I survived all of this. And the interesting thing for me is, even though I've had some of these experiences where I've gone to the other side and actually experienced, you know, the aspect of death where the spirit and soul leave the body, and others where it's just a miracle that I'm alive and there's no sense for it. But just knowing that I've had to work through my trauma, because the trauma is real and it sits in the psyche in terms of how I mind. You know, we have stories attached to our beliefs, which then play out in our soul and in our spirit and our body in the way that we are in the world. But yes, I have had a lot. A little too many, I sometimes say.
Jacqui, that is quite a lot, because my next question is, so are you like Sophie, your cat? Do you have 9 lives?
Well, I said to Natasha the other day, so Natasha works with me, she handles all of my PR and social media. And I said to the other day, I can't even say I'm a cat anymore, because it just doesn't make sense, because I've had 2 this year. How do I break the news to people? I'm number 11. But my trauma was reignited the other day, and I was feeling very emotional. And I sat there crying. I said, I don't want any more. I don't want any more. This is enough for one human being. So, and that's the amazing thing, is to see how when we are re-traumatized, even though you're not in the trauma moment, how we can sometimes melt down and allow myself to just be messy on those days, and then come back to the aspect of, you know, the work that I do, which is about overcoming and healing from trauma.
Yes, because in that moment, because I love what you just said, and I always tell that as well to people, allow yourself to be off or down, or allow yourself. It's okay. It's really okay. You know, and you talk a lot about dare to love. Now, when I did my homework about you, this is the one question I couldn't wait to ask you this, okay? So you say dare to be loved, but you don't say dare to be loved. So
yes.
And I love that. I absolutely love that because it's a huge difference. Can you please, because, or am I reading this wrong? Because for me as a reader, it feels to me there's a huge difference, and I love it. Because to be loved or to be dared to be loved, you know, please explain to me that difference, because I've never heard those words. And the whole time I want to put a D in front of it, but on the back of it, but a D doesn't belong there. This is not love. It's love. Please talk to me about that.
So, Leilani, you're aware of the fact that I've just published this book recently, Life's Not Yoga, or is it? And it's my life story as to how I came to the understanding of love. So, and that's where the conclusion is how I realized the difference between, you know, having so much emotional trauma from my father. I was always looking for unconditional love, and I felt that he loved me conditionally. But when I realized that through the conversations that I have through my life, when I start healing from my trauma, really working to try and unpack why I was still feeling my trauma from the past, even though I was beyond it. In the present moment, I was safe. And realizing that, for example, to say to people, it's okay to be a mess, but this was an important level, the step up for me in that was not only being a mess, knowing I was a mess, and then allowing myself to be a mess. And as opposed to just being a mess, just being conscious of the fact that I was in a messy place. And then loving myself in the mess, just being love for myself, having love and compassion for myself. And that was a significant part of shifting in terms of healing my trauma. So coming to the aspect of be love, when you can be love for whatever happens in your life, when you can be love for an experience, when you can be love, so whether I'm being love for myself or I'm being love for someone who might have hurt me, or when I'm being love for the fact that I'm still carrying trauma from a near-death experience as a drowning, is when I can just say this experience happened. What if I just look at it and love myself anyway? And what if I look at it and love my perpetrator anyway? So when I look at it from that point of view, I can be love. I don't have to change in that moment. I just have to accept what happened. And in accepting, no matter the trauma that I've experienced, and I hold that safely, I stop judging the other person. So my hate goes away, my anger goes away. I don't like what they did, particularly when someone's hurt you. I don't like some of my experience I've been through that just happened. I don't respect the person who might have hurt me. I don't respect their decision, but I'm looking for respect in myself, for respecting my decision to let go of judgment. Judgment for how I feel, judgment for how I feel for myself, my own pain, judgment for what somebody else did for me, or just judgment for an event, something that happened that makes no sense, a car accident. And when you hold it from that space, you can actually then sit in the pain for moments and be a mess, but it's part of the healing. So we see animals in the wild, the wonderful work of Tiori. I don't know if you've ever heard about it. But actually, my cat fell in the pool the other day, my little Sophie. And when she came out, she managed to get herself, but she was so traumatized and she shook everything out. And they say animals know to be at one with the trauma, and they shake it out of their DNA. And then an hour later, it's completely forgotten. Wow. We as humans have such ego pride where we feel we need to hold on to our story or tell everyone that what happened to us so that they can feel sorry for us, because in some ways we're then getting love. But it was when I learned to be love that love from the world came towards me. When I wasn't trying to blame what happened to me or excuse what happened to me or ashamed of some of the things I'd done, including, you know, suicide attempts. So getting rid of my shame, guilt, and blame, the guilt for a decision I might have made to put myself in a position where something happened, the anger I might feel as a result of injuring or trying to self-injure or hurt myself, or particularly the anger and resentment I would have felt towards someone who did something to me. But that's the conclusion of my book, because my existential question that I'm asking all the time is God love? Now, this is not a book about religion. This is a book about my relationship with how could God love me? Or how can the Bible say God is love and those things could happen to me? But when understanding that God is within me, that love is within me, that I got to the understanding of what be love means, to be at peace with what is. And that is being love. I hope that makes some sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I can't wait to read your book. I can't wait to read your book. Ek met my Engels moet ek die woorde klaar praat, okay? Want ek sny partykeer my woorde af. Maar weet jy, ek kan nie wag om jou boek te lees nie. En toe ek research gedoen het oor jou en alles, ek kon die gevoel kry dat jy in 'n baie goeie plek is, jy weet, en jy aanvaar amper al hierdie goeders, en soos jy sê, jy vra nie meer hoekom ek nie. Jy verstaan dit amper. So my question to you now is daar tips in jou boek vir mense hoe om oor te gaan na daai besluit toe van be love?
Yeah. The book is my story, but interweaved through there is the teachings that I write about on my blog in terms of how to do it. And the volgende book is a book for mense wat, they're looking for an easy way to try and understand some of their story. But it's interweaved through the book. Some people don't get it first time. And I had an amazing woman who was always negative, always off work, always sick, and always complaining about the fact that she had cancer. This was her trauma. And she read my book, and she said that she read the book 3 times, because the first time she read the book, she said, I felt like I was a character in the book playing the part, playing the victim. Then she said the second time she read the book, and she read it because she got to meet me and she understood me. She was actually meeting herself, I believe. When she read the book for the 3rd time, you must see her review. It's so amazing. I feel like the most blessed person in the world. And when she read the book for the first time, she said to me, the book was actually for me. And now she's the best employee, celebrates, the fact that she's traveled with cancer, wanting to talk about being loved, because she had to find it inside herself to get beyond the victim's voice, to get beyond the pain story, to get beyond the trauma. And it's not easy, as you know, with someone who suffered the trauma that you have, but it's levels of dealing, it's levels of healing the body, because even if it's a soul injury into the mind, the body takes the knock. We carry the trauma, and then we've got to heal the mind. And part of the mind is, like you said, when you got that message yesterday of be love, your mind took in the thought process, but your soul, your healed soul reacted and was be able to mobilize from be love. And then the next part is when you're very connected with your spirit, then you feel the essence and love of God or universal love or whatever you want to call it. But definitely for readers that don't know me, because even though the story is mine, the story is yours, and it's the shared human experience. So it's very, very interweaved there, and I get so excited. I get messages from people all over the world. An amazing woman from East London the other day who works on a production line at Mercedes-Benz. This other woman who, she said it's just changed her life radically. But it was because she had the courage and strength to look at how she was engaging with her pain story, how she was playing the role of victim, as opposed to seeing what she could do now in the present moment to heal and live a fulfilled life despite what had happened to her. But the short answer to your question is yes.
Yes. No, okay. Thank you for clearing that, because I think men can also read your book. This is not just for women who's been through hectic trauma. This can be to a couple who've maybe lost a child. It can be to somebody, anything. So this book, this is why I can't wait to read it, okay? This book is for anyone out there, for anyone, even if you've never been through trauma, but you may be sitting with a parent or a friend who's going through trauma. Maybe you can learn to how to be there for them.
I do believe that it is that. I didn't really see that when we originally did the market research. We thought it was going to be women 35 to 55. But I've had young men in their 20s reading it, and one of my oldest friends who's 94, he read it. And so I've got people of all ages from all backgrounds that are reading the book and really, really seeing what the book means, because they can create the causal link for themselves as a result of their own life experiences. So definitely for men, women, any age group, any religion, any background. If you've suffered trauma, some people just read it as
motivational. Yeah, invest in yourself. Sometimes, and I'm just thinking about it right now. I think it's sometimes just good to read a book like that, because maybe eventually you may be unfortunate do experience trauma. Then you prepared for it. You handle it maybe a little bit different. It's like in marriage. I'm a firm believer of going for counseling. It doesn't mean there's problems in your marriage. It means you invest in your marriage. So reading a book like this is an investment to yourself as a person. For me, there's nothing wrong. You don't have to necessarily went through trauma to read it. It's just an investment in yourself, because you love yourself and you want to love yourself, and you maybe struggle with a bad temper. Maybe that's why you must read it, to rather handle situations better.
Definitely read it if you've got a bad temper.
Because I told you before our interview this morning what I went through last night and this morning, okay? And I'm so grateful. You know, those words were in my mind. Be love, be love. So, you know, it's just, this is a good book. You must read it. Yes, I haven't read it, but from what I read about what people say about it, how honest you are about it, you're brutal honest. You're not sugarcoating it. You know, one person wrote, she's not really a reader, but you couldn't put this book down. You know, it was a page turner. I absolutely love that word. It's a page turner. You know, that's a great compliment. And I want to really congratulate you as well on, jy's op Amazon. I mean, jy's ou, dit Afrikanertjie of 'n Suid-Afrikaner hier van hierdie pragtige Suid-Afrika. En met trots kan ek sê, jy weet, dis my lekker toe ek lees. Jou boek is beskikbaar op Amazon. So well done vir daai.
Thank you. Yeah, but it was a lot of work, but it was all worth it. And as I said, it's exciting when people from all over the world message me. You know, I get messages from San Diego, and I get private messages, or people write reviews, and it's helped understand them. You know, Leilani, if I may, you know, something that was quite a shock for me when I lived in America. I lived there for 5 years, and I recently came back to South Africa, was realizing that we all carry trauma, even if it's a small trauma. The moment we have a judgment for anything, the moment we say we don't like someone, there's a lesson for us in terms of our judgment. There's a trauma causal link there. It doesn't have to be significant trauma, but trauma affects the body. And I never forget, actually Dan in the book, his daughter had a bumper bashing, just recently had a friend had a car and they had a bumper bashing at school, and neither of them, nobody was hurt, no cars were scratched, and the kids went for trauma therapy. And I remember thinking my eyes were the size of saucers and saying, what's wrong with you? Surely you should be fine. It's very much a South African mentality. Because I never forget a friend who was hijacked. And he says, well, thank heavens, you know, nobody was hurt. It was always, we excuse away what didn't happen because we do live in a country with a significant amount of trauma as a result of our history, as a result of our poverty, as a result of our lack of education. And so we probably live with more aggressive trauma than, say, for example, America in terms of quantum. But what I realized in that moment was maybe I was judging this trauma that they were having. Maybe I was judging that for them this was trauma. And with my reading and studies that I did, realizing that traumas also affected their DNA. Obviously, the more significant the size of the trauma, there's more work to do. But any trauma that we have, so we mustn't just think of trauma as significant trauma in terms of what we need to deal and heal, because even someone who might have a relatively insignificant trauma could carry anger and therefore become emotionally abusive or aggressive or responsive, but in an unconscious way as a result of the trauma that they have. So definitely, I think the book or any trauma healing book is good for anybody.
Yeah, no, I really can't wait to read it. So, life is not yoga. How did you get to this name? How did you get to that name? Because I'm sure, I think deciding on a name for a book is quite a difficult decision to decide which title you're going to choose, because you know, there's so many lines in your book that you can use. There's so many quotes in your personal life. Because one of the quotes I really, really love is something you said, I believe I was gifted with traumatic life experiences. You know, so, and that's just one thing I read. And then you also, there's so many other things you said, you know, but how did you decide on that title?
Well, it was quite hard because originally the book was called I Dare to Ask, because right throughout my life, I'm looking for an answer to why we are here on earth. Why do we have to go through these things? This is the existential question. How can there be a God? How can there be anything out there for us as mankind if I had to go through as much as I went through? Not just one experience after experience after experience. And there's a time in my life where not only have I gone through all of these traumas, as a result of my trauma, I have blown up my whole life, my marriage, my money, everything. I've just given everything away because I don't believe I'm worthy of love. I don't believe I'm worthy of having anything. You know, I'm in this absolute self-destructive mode, and I'm not aware of the fact that I'm doing it. And at some stage, I write in the book, you know, whereas I'm sort of working through, you know, people have told me that yoga can help heal and all of these things, meditation, etc. And I've done meditation for years. I've done sport all my life. But there was still a disconnect from me because my soul, body, and mind were not connected with my spirit. I wasn't healing from that place, and I wasn't connected to universal spirit. So as I said, God, love, whatever you want to call it. And in the book, I actually say, you know, where I'm busy, I've lost everything. My life has fallen apart. I've got nothing. My life is now down to a suitcase. I'm 46 years old. All of my education, which I've got, you know, finance background, master's degree, everything's failed me. Everything has failed me, including me, myself. And I talk about where I'm angry and I'm trying to be Zen about it. And I have this outburst where I say, life's not yoga. And then I talk about, but the importance of the work that I did through all of those healing modalities, whether it be TRE or yoga or whatever, was bringing me to the awareness of the fact that I was in crisis, and with awareness of the victim mode that I was in, I could heal. As soon as we stay in victim mode, we're not healing. But when we can be aware that we're stuck in victim mode, we can heal. So, you know, yoga is one of these things where you go onto your mat, you watch yourself, you watch your movement, you watch your breath. So you're working with breath through the body, and it's teaching you how to respond to life in a way with love. Respond to your body for a way you might judge yourself, the way you're holding a pose, the way you're feeling about your day, the way you're feeling about your yoga. It's reminding you to stop and watch your response. But life's not yoga, because sometimes things are thrown at us. And like, I'm not on my mat. This is too traumatic. I can't just lie here and breathe. Life's not yoga. It's too much. Hyperventilate, anxiety attack. But it's in that moment of life's not yoga, because things will get thrown at you. Or is it? And the or is it of the subtitle is, how do we respond to our trauma?
Yeah.
How do we heal from our trauma? So that's why, you know, the book is called Life's Not Yoga, with a small bit, or is it? And then the play is finding love in the chaos of life, and the love that we speak about, not romantic love, the love that we're talking about, finding love for what is.
Yeah.
Love for the experience.
No, I think it's an awesome title. You know, on that note, I actually want to say maybe, or no, not maybe, for a fact, life is sometimes like Bikram yoga, okay? You just want to get out. It's getting charged. You need to leave now.
Yeah, that's life. Life sometimes can be a little bit hot for us. Like when something happens that we don't want to happen.
I read somewhere, Ken said, okay, he said, what he loved about your relationship is that you guys were able to speak the loudest in silence. You know, that is just such profound words to me, because I'm married to a introvert, okay? And I'm in my second marriage. And I always tell people, one thing I've learned in my second marriage is how to become quiet. Because sometimes we want to fight, and we always want to get the last word in and things like that. And being quiet is a good thing sometimes. You know, rather, soos in Afrikaans sê, hou 'n wag voor jou mond. Okay? But what tip can you maybe give to couples, okay? How to get that able to the loudest, to speak the loudest in silence? Do you think it's all couples can get there? Do you have maybe any advice about that? Because for me as a married person, I really took something from that as well, because I think if you can get there, then it's a wonderful place to be.
It is an amazing place to be. And I think that's what you achieved with the person you were dealing with yesterday, that you were frustrated or angry with and you wanted to lash out. So this is what you did, and this is what I do. And I had an incident with my boyfriend on Saturday where we were out with friends, and he was treating me in a way that was hurting me. Okay. He was triggered by something. I didn't know what he was triggered by. He was triggered by something that I did. And as a result, his behavior changed from very loving and kind to me. It was cutting me out. And I watched how I felt, and I decided to sit back and be quiet. I watched how I felt. I didn't say like, don't talk to me that way, or I didn't have an anger. And if you read in my book, the way I was with my ex-husband towards the end of my marriage, I would shout out because I wanted to be heard. And I was silent, and I just sat back and I listened to how I was feeling. I felt how I was feeling. I listened to what thoughts I had. And then before my ego could get hooked onto one and saying, where I want to say to him, don't you, because it is about, we need to have boundaries, but don't you ever speak to me that way, where he wasn't capable of hearing me. We went home that night. I went back to my place. He went back to his place. And the next morning, you know, he said, morning, how are you doing? You know, and I was able to, he knew there was something, because we all know when we hurt somebody actually. But had I attacked him back, or had I spoken out then, I might have blocked down his ability to be compassionate for himself for being unkind. He had to accept that he wasn't kind to me. And the next day I said to him, you know, I didn't appreciate how that happened and we need to talk about it. But I want you to know that it made me feel sad. Now, if we love somebody, we don't like making them feel sad, but I wasn't aggressive. I said, it made me feel sad. Not you're a bad person, not how dare you do that, or why did you do it? I just said it made me feel sad. And we ended up having a conversation, and he was going away to visit family the next day. And he said he's so happy it didn't escalate. But part of it is there is no need to escalate, you know, friction or pressing against each other. And it's sad because we've got all these wars going on in the world because we feel we need to force our opinion on someone. And then this is what actually happened, is when I stood back, this is what I was able to say to him. I told you all the things I wanted to say. I was able to share with you, once I had dealt with my own anger and said, he must be him, I must be me. And in him being him and me being me, I hope we can communicate it out with kindness and with love. And then I was able to say to him, these are all the things I wanted to say. You must do this, and you must do this, and you must do this, and you must. That was my ego wanting to hold on to everything. But all I want to say to you is, you must do whatever you want to do. You are going to do whatever you want to do. You are who you are. I just want you to know that when you did that, I don't understand why. And when you did it, it hurt me. So there was no blame. There was no putting guilt or shame on him. And when he was able to look at the way he behaved, he could say, well, yes, something before that frustrated me. And I'm aware of the fact I took it out on you. And I'm sorry, but can we talk about what frustrated me? We got back to the original cause of what frustration was about. Now, that's not necessarily that I'm going to change being that way. He might have to work with, as a result of his trigger, he felt attacked, victimized, uncomfortable, that he needed to lash out. Like you wanted to write 100 letters to this person saying, how dare you do this? But you said, you stood back, you saw these words, be love, and you said, be love. And then you acted from the space of love, because you could put your anger aside, you could put your frustration aside, but more importantly, you could put your judgment aside and go into what we call assessment mode. And you could share with that person that your assessment of how they behaved wasn't comfortable for you, and the two of you found a place to communicate from a space of acceptance, love, and compassion, which is being love. So that's the example I can give, is how we help each other.
I love that explanation. You know, I'm definitely going to use it myself, because you said a very important word now, escalation. With friendships, within your family, colleagues, clients, us with the public, wherever, in your marriage, in your relationships, you know, when it escalates, that's when it's getting into a war. So I love what you just said. Thank you so much for that. Because I'm also the owner of Date Night SA, you know, so I'm going to maybe talk to you a little bit later about that. We can do something on that, because anyway.
I lost you the owner of?
Yeah, of Date Night SA. So I give couples idea what to do for date night. But yeah, so we'll definitely talk about that. So I'm going to end off with my last question. So I want to know, I see your bestie is Amanda, who's 8,000 miles away. What do you miss about her? If you can tell her, if she's listening to this interview, would you like to close off with a message to her?
Amanda knows I love her. You know, we chat on WhatsApp, even if it's a short message, every day. And what I love about her is that she accepts me for who I am. And, you know, you were talking about relationships. I was in a reading with a group of ladies from Tanzania the other night, and they asked the question about my mother. How did we heal the combined wound? Because I never managed to achieve that with my father before he passed, but I did with my mother. And the most important thing was to let my mother know that I love her, accept her for who she was, not ask her to be any different. And then she was able to come to me because I offered love for who she was. And that's my message to Amanda. Thank you for loving me unconditionally, the way that you do, as often as you do, the fact that you practice that. And when we get it wrong, that we sit, we chat about it, and we start again. And I love you. I'll always love you for being the friend that you are, because in our experience as two people, I learn and you teach me things every day.
That's such a nice closing. Thank you so much. Listen, I really enjoyed chatting to you. I'm sure our listeners would love, all this information. I'm sure, like I told you earlier, for me, it's not about reaching 1,000 people. It's about reaching 1 or 2 people. I'm not saying I don't want my channel to grow. That's not what I'm saying. My point is, it's not about sitting around the braai, bragging about my 1,000 views, but I didn't make any difference. It's more about, to me, to make a difference to 1 or 2 people, or maybe 100. So ek glo in my hele hart dat as iemand hierna luister vanoggend, dat hulle kan iets baie mooi hier uitvat oor vriendskap, liefde, verhouding met jou ouers. En ek dink daar's soveel dinge in jou boek wat iemand kan gaan lees wat van toepassing is op hulle eie lewe. Ek het skoon 'n knop in die keel nou, okay? This is the first time this happened. I really have it in my, I'm feeling a bit emotional now, but this was a great interview. I absolutely enjoyed it so much. And thank you for your time. Dit was baie lekker om jou te ontmoet.
Ja, Leilani, die werk wat jy doen is baie belangrik. So I sincerely hope that you touch the hearts of more than 1 or 2 people. But what's fascinating and what I'm loving watching from my years of doing this kind of work and wanting people to connect with people out there is realizing that you are aware that you don't want your ego involved in this work. And, the next part for me was to silence false humility and say, it's okay if it's 1 or 2. No, we want to affect lots of people. We want to help lots of people. Let's just do it all. Let's go for it and let them come. We will be there to hold their hand and help them and share our story and inspire them. And they will go on to affect 1 million more. So I wish for you that you affect lots of people, because your journey's been amazing. It's been courageous, and you found love for yourself, and you're on top of your ego. But remember, the egotistical side is who wants to sit around the fire. The false humility says 1 or 2. Come back to Center Girl, do the work, and let's change many people's lives together.
Ja, nee, dit sal baie lekker wees. Dit is after all die doel hierso. So ek wil net gou net afsit op jou device. Ek het 'n tattoo wat liefde op is.
Yeah.
So I love love. My whole life is about love. You can fix everything with love. So, but on that note, I'm going to see you again. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your time. Cheers, everyone.
Yes, bye.